This is the Ramana Maharshi 40 Verses on Reality Satsang, a time for self-reflection and self-inquiry. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. Welcome. I'm a seeker, like you, sharing what we love. I have been blessed with years of deep teaching and practice. I bring this to this satsang. This week's reading from 40 Verses on Reality is verse 8. These are Ramana's words. Although the world and knowledge thereof rise and set together, it is by knowledge alone that the world is made apparent. That perfection wherein the world and knowledge thereof rise and set, and which shines without rising and setting, is alone the reality. Worship can orient your mind towards the self, but it is a means to realization, not an end in itself. Ramana talks here about using the mind through worship to reach past the mind. The mind operates in the world of name and form. No name and form means no mind. Only the self can know the self. The mind can never know the self. The mind is within the self, not the other way around. When you turn your own light of consciousness upon itself, you'll find that this light that is lit up, illuminated by itself, it knows itself. Nothing else is needed. What is this self-effulgent light, this light of consciousness? Is this light any different from you? Are you any different from this light, this awareness? Now for some notes on practice. When you look outside or inside your body, all that you perceive is objective to you. It is an object of perception. You are the subject. You are never any object. You are always the subject. How can you be a body? The body is known, and you are the knower. When you look within at more subtle experiences, like feelings, moods, and thoughts, these are all objective, known to you. You are the subject, not the object. How can you be the mind? The mind is known, and you are the knower. Who is the knower of all of these? The knower never appears as the known. How could it? Does the eye see itself? Who is this unknown knower of all that is known? You are never the known. You are always the knower. How could you be other than the knower? Does this knower need any light other than its own to know? Now to our videos for this week. First is Swami Sarvapriyananda, and he is talking about self-realization.
The Kathopanishad says, it's because our awareness is turned outwards. We see outside, we hear things, taste and smell and touch. Our senses flow outside. Very beautiful poetry. Our senses are turned outwards. They have been designed in such a way. It's meant to give us knowledge from the external world. But we keep on flowing outward with the senses, and therefore we do not see the inner self, which is the subject, not an object. But a rare one, Kaschid Dhira, a rare heroic spiritual seeker, what does this person do? Realizes the inner self, the pure subject. Consciousness, not an object. Pratyag Atmanam Aikshat realizes the inner self. Pratyag means inner. How does this person realize the inner self? Avritta Chakshur literally means covering the eyes or turning inwards. Not being so extroverted, turning inwards. Avritta Chakshur. Why would this person do it? What is the goal? Amritatvam Icchan, desiring immortality. That is the goal. We are trapped in this wheel of birth and death, of sorrow and suffering. To go beyond this darkness, this strife, constant strife, this is the purpose of Vedanta. And this is the spiritual seeker attains this by realizing the inmost self. What is that this person realizes? So a very beautiful technique is given in the Kathopanishad. The famous Chariot Analogy. The Kathopanishad is full of so many treasures. I mean, we could go on and on talking about it. One of the famous ones is the chariot example, where the human personality is compared to a chariot, and life is compared to a spiritual journey. You are the passenger in the chariot. You means the Atma, the real self, the real us. We are the passenger. And the body, what is the chariot? What's the car? What's your SUV? The body. So immediately see with this example, if you hold on to the example, a little gap opens up between you and your body. I am not the body, no more than I am my Toyota or Honda. So the body is the chariot, I am the passenger. And then further develops the analogy example further. The intellect, the faculty of understanding, is the driver. You are not even the driver. You are very rich. You have a chauffeur a flunky to drive you around town. So the intellect is the driver. Again, notice something. If the intellect is the driver and you are the passenger, then you are not the intellect either. Even the faculty of understanding which we are using now, hopefully, to understand this is also an instrument. It's not you. And the mind, he says, the mind is the reins by which you hold the horses which are powering the chariot. So mind is the reins, by which you control this body. And then it develops it further. In the wise say, the horses are the senses. The 5 sense organs are your horses. And their objects. For the eyes, sight. For the ears, sound, smell, and taste, and touch. This is the road, the track on which they run. So the horses run on this. And in combination with all of this, with the intellect, which is the driver, with the body, which is the chariot, with the mind, which is the reins, and the senses, which are the horses, all of this in combination with you, the passenger, bhokta iti ahu, you are called the experiencer. sometimes translated as enjoyer, but pleasure and pain, both are experienced. So this person which we consider ourselves to be is actually a limitation of our real self. I, the infinite consciousness, now limited by a body, by this intellect, by this mind, by these senses, now I am this jiva, this sentient being, the bhokta. And I have to reach my goal, which is enlightenment, realization. How will I reach it? At every stage, the sadhana, the spiritual practices, the senses have to be trained. Ill-trained senses are like the uncontrolled horses. They will take the charioteer and the passenger to ruin, crash, 911. And the mind has to be trained. He says, samanaska. Long time before, today we have the mindfulness revolution. Literally the same word, mindfulness. The mind has to be alert, mindful. And intellect, the driver, has to be well-informed, vijnanavan. Well-informed means the spiritual knowledge. Plenty of Kathopanishad has to be there at the intellectual level. This awareness. The intellect has to be aware that I, the passenger, am the passenger, I'm not the intellect. That knowledge is also in the intellect only. And there's difference. So the driver has to know, has to have a good GPS, Won't work if in crucial times no reception, no, then you'll get confused. So a good GPS the driver has, and then only this person you will realize you will reach the goal. The goal is actually not far away. Though the example is given like you are going in a chariot to a long distance, it's an example. But if you think about it, the goal is you yourself, your real self, from the small s self to the capital S self. I was just thinking today, when we used to teach trainee teachers back in India, there's a teachers training college. So the principle of teaching, good teaching, is from the known to the unknown. So when you talk to students, you should start with where the students are, what they know, and then take them step by step to the unknown. From the near to the far. From what is near them to what you want to teach them far. From what is to what shall be. What is right now, what is their condition, and what you want to take them to, that far condition, that next step. But if you apply it to Vedanta, what it becomes is, it's not from the near to the far, it's from near to the nearest, because it is you yourself. The Upanishad says, nearer than the nearest. And then it is not from known to unknown. It is from known to the very heart of knowledge, which is consciousness. And it is not from what is to what shall be. It is to the reality, what is actually, the heart of what is, existence, Sat. So it's very interesting if you think about it that way. And then the Upanishad gives you the Panchakosha Viveka. Notice how the layers of the human personality are also indicated by this chariot example. Body, the chariot. The senses, the horses. And the reins, the mind. The intellect, the driver. And the passenger. And the passenger is clearly different from all of them. And so the whole purpose, the technique which is taught here by Yama teaches Nachiketa, is to transfer the reference of the of the ego, from the body-mind complex, from the chariot, driver, reins and horses, to the passenger. What it means is, when I say clock, a word means something. So when I say clock is a word. It refers to an object, this one. When I say cloth is a word, it refers to an object, this one. When I say body, it refers to an object, this one. When I say I, what does it refer to? Normally, immediately we say I means here, I am. This is who I am. We normally refer to the body-mind. This example shows us that what we normally refer to by the word I, by the term I, is the chariot, the driver, the reins, the horses. But what we should be referring to is the passenger. It's like the passenger has forgotten himself or herself and has become completely identified with the surrounding vehicle. So this difference, this shifting of the reference of the I, panchakosha viveka, that is done. Avastatraya viveka, the method of the three states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. All of them, they are found in the Kathopanishad. Yama teaches all this to Nachiketa. The self itself, it's described in extraordinary terms, very glorious terms in the Kathopanishad. You are this pure consciousness beyond any attribute. Nirguna Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi, that is shown there. One of the mantras is Ashabdam Asparsham Arupam Arupam Abhyayam Tatharasam Nityam Agandhavachayat Tatharasam Anadyanantam Anadyanantam Mahataf Param Dhruvam Nijayatan Mrityu Mukhat Pramuchyate. Ashabdam, Asparsham, Arupam. It is beyond sound. It is beyond form. It is beyond taste. It is beyond the senses of smell. So all the five senses, they cannot objectify it, which means the true self, you, the passenger, you are not an object. What does it mean? It gives your technique a clue into investigating yourself, into this inward journey. If it is anything that you experience, it's not the Atman. When you ask this question, who am I, and look at your experience right now, it is available to you. The real Atman, pure self, is available to us all the time. But when you look at yourself right now, when you ask this question, who am I, if the answers which keep coming one after another, if you experience it, then it's not the real self. If it's an object, I ask, who am I? Here. But is it an object, the body? Yes. Then it's not the Atman. The breath. Did I experience it? Yes. Otherwise, the whole mindfulness industry will disappear. You focus on the breath, the breathing in and breathing out. Yes, it's an object. You are asked to be mindful of the breath. But what Yama is saying, did you experience the breath? Are you mindful of it? Means, is it an object to your awareness? Yes. Then it is not the self. Well, you might say, I didn't think that the breath was, I am the breath. All right, let's go deeper. The thoughts in the mind. The thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories. Do we experience those? Do we experience our thoughts and feelings? Of course we do. When we introspect, we feel. I am happy, I feel it. I remember, I feel it. It's on the tip of my tongue, I can't recall, I feel it. Therefore, memory and thoughts and emotions, they all are objects, not me, not the real self. Go deeper. The intellect itself, the one which is trying to understand right now, which seems the closest to me, is it me? Yes, I feel it. I feel this intellect. When I don't understand something, I feel it. When I understand something, I make that breakthrough, the aha moment, I feel it. If I feel it, it's not you. It's not the Atman. Go further. Swami, if I go any further back, it's just a blank. Do you feel the blank? Yes. Then it's not you. That which feels the blank but cannot be felt, that is you. Mahataf Param, beyond the intellect, transcending the intellect, and which is not an object to the intellect, which is not an object for the mind, which is not an object for the senses. That consciousness, it's nothing, it's not nothing. That blank is nothing. The witness of that nothing is not nothing. After all, you experience the nothing. Who experiences the nothing? Don't try to make it an object. It is your real nature. The pure subject. Beyond beginning and beyond any end. Anadi anantam. Nityam. Dhruvam. Unchanging. Atman. more confidently we should say, I am that. I am the pure subject. I am without beginning, without end. The body has a beginning and an end. Each breath has a beginning and an end. And all the breaths that this body will take has a beginning and an end. One day it will stop breathing. Thoughts have beginning and end. Even memory has beginning and end. But they all appear to me, I, the pure subject of the nature of awareness. How did you know it's awareness, if you ask? Because you are aware. Because you are having experiences. It must be of the nature of awareness. This pure consciousness. Pure in what sense? I'm not saying pure in the sense of bad or good. Pure, impure, not in that sense. Pure means consciousness minus object. Consciousness itself. This consciousness minus object is the pure consciousness, is our true nature. I am that. Nijayatan mrityu mukhat pramuchyate. Realizing this, where here itself, now itself, in the body and mind complex which you thought you were till now, in the vehicle, find the passenger. And knowing that, go beyond death. Escape, literally it means escape from the jaws of death. Mrityu mukhat pramuchyate. You're eternally free from death. Escape means once you find that, you realize, I, that consciousness, I am never born, I never die. I can never die. Death is an appearance. It plays in my light. I am not subject to death. So you realize you're already pre-existing immortality. Mrityu mukhat pramuchyate. And mrityu, death, Shankaracharya in his commentary says, avidya kama karma. That is not just the death of this particular body. Is a classic phrase which he is very fond of. Ignorance, desire, and karma. I am not aware of my real nature. And therefore I become identified with the body-mind. Who am I? I am a Toyota. We may laugh, but that's exactly what we are doing. I am an SUV. Or, if I happen to be particularly ancient, I am a Ford Model T. Rare these days. No, you're not. You may be sitting in one, driving one, but that's what, we become identified with that. Once I see the difference between me and that, I realize my immortal nature. Mrityu mukhat pramuchyate. So being identified with that body-mind, I start thinking, I am that, and all my decisions become subject to this misconception.
And next is Rupert. Spira. Are there stages in realization?
First of all, what am I? I am obviously that which is aware of my experience. I am aware of my thoughts. I am aware of my feelings. I am aware of the sound of the waves and the sight of the sea. I am aware of the taste of tea. I am aware of the sight of this room. I am aware, I am aware, I am aware. It pervades all experience. It's ever present in all experience. Why it took me 20 years to recognize this simple fact, what I essentially am is simply the presence of awareness, I can't tell you. It was just the preparation that I needed. I was busy trying to still my mind, those kind of practices. So at some point first of all, this recognition presented itself to me very clearly. Simply, I am that which is aware of my experience. That with which all objective experience is known, but which itself cannot be known as an object. And it was so simple, it's so obvious. You don't need 20 years of preparation to understand that. You could say this to anybody on the street, and if they were open and willing to explore their experience, It doesn't need to take long. Then the second question, which was in some ways an inevitable follow-on from this first discovery, is, okay, what I essentially am is awareness, but what is the nature of this awareness? It seems to me to be located in here, doing the thinking, looking out through my eyes, in here doing the feeling. So the second exploration is not as straightforward as the first. The first is relatively simple. Yes, it is obvious that what we call I, what we have been calling I all our life, is that which is aware of all this changing experience. And it seems so obvious to us to begin with that this I, this aware being, this presence of awareness, is located in and shares the limits of the body. For instance, we close our eyes, we can no longer see the world. So we think, oh, in that case, it's obvious that whatever it is that is seeing the world must be located behind my eyes. I close them, I don't see the world anymore. So it seems to be perfectly logical to believe, and more importantly feel, that I lives in here, behind the eyes, behind the ears, in here, feeling. So this investigation into the nature of awareness or consciousness is another stage, or a second stage after the recognition I am awareness. And this took some time. It was over a period of a few years. When I first met my teacher, there was this very intense, I was involved with it, every spare moment I had. The exploration is, what is the nature of the knowing with which I know my experience? There seems to be evidence for it being temporary and finite. In other words, there seems to be evidence that it shares the destiny and the limits of the body. But when I look for that evidence, when I look at the non-objective experience of simply being aware, I don't find any objective qualities there. It's an undoubted experience. Each of us now knows that I am aware. So the experience of being aware is an experience, but it's a unique experience because it has no objective qualities. It's not like a thought or a feeling or a perception. And being without objective qualities, it has no limits, either in time or space. So what I'm describing now I'm describing it rationally. But the discovery is an experiential discovery, that what I essentially am, the very knowing which is now knowing all of this experience, itself has no limits. And that is the freedom from the sense of limitation, both in time, that is the freedom from the belief I was born and I will die, and the freedom from the limits in space, that is, I am not finite, I am infinite. And the experiential consequence of this discovery is that I don't need anything. I'm complete. I'm full in myself. And so this puts an end to the sense of lack. So these two discoveries, I am not located in time, I do not appear or disappear, I was not born, I will not die. That puts an end to the fear of death. And this discovery that I am complete by myself, I, consciousness, don't need anything from the mind, the body, or the world. This puts an end to our sense of lack. And these are the two essential feelings that define the separate self, the fear of death and the sense of lack. And all the separate self, the imaginary separate self's activities are designed to allay the sense of fear and fulfill the sense of lack. That is what everybody who believes themselves to be a separate self is doing in their lives. So this recognition that what I am is ever present and has no limits, it provides a new basis from which to think, from which to feel, from which to relate and perceive and act. And that's the discovery, I am awareness, it's a discovery. It doesn't develop. I am obviously that which is aware. And then the recognition that that which is aware has no limits is also, it's a non-objective experience. It's a recognition. Oh yes, of course. It's so obvious. What I essentially am, the knowing with which I know my experience, is unlimited. That's a recognition. You can't go back from that. However, there is then another process, which is an endless process, which is how to live this understanding, this feeling understanding. How does that affect the way we think, the way we feel, the way we perceive, the way we act, the way we relate to other people? And this is the third stage, which really goes on forever. This colonization of the entire realm of experience. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, activities, relationships, perceptions. That's an endless process. And it's really the art of life, is to live life, all realms of our life, in a way that is consistent with and an expression of this understanding.
And finally, we had Nome talking about what is self-realization.
The self is one alone. It is with no difference. It is only by misidentifying with the mind that one can think of a multiplicity of selves, internally, so to speak. And with misidentification with the body, that one can think of multiplicity of selves externally, so to speak. The internal and the external being determined again from the I am the body misidentification. But you are not the body, and you are not the mind. Unperceived, unconceived. The nature of the self is unalloyed, undifferentiated existence. One without anything other or different whatsoever. It is beginningless and eternal. It is limitless and thus truly infinite. Inconceivable, it is immeasurable. This, the perpetual, non-dual existence, is Brahman. And this Brahman is yourself. one should seek to realize the self for the sake of final peace and immortal bliss, and complete liberation from all of the imagined bondage and its consequent suffering. What is the nature of the realization that is to be sought? The nature of self-realization must necessarily be identical with the self that is to be realized. So then, just as the self is not an event with a beginning and an end, likewise self-realization is not an event. If it had a beginning, it would have an end. And as the Maharshi has instructed, what is not eternal is not worth seeking. So what is this self-realization? It is not an experience that comes to one as if you were an individual being who will experience another kind of self. For the individuality is just the primal misidentification, the I notion or I thought, as it is referred to. And your existence is not an experience, something that comes and goes. If it is not an event, not an experience, then similarly it is not a state of mind. Indeed, it is not anything transitory, not anything that appears or disappears. Self-realization is said to be complete peace, the perfect fullness of bliss, and indeed this is so. Sages and scriptures declare that one ought to seek self-realization, that itself is the purpose of life, and indeed it is so. Yet what is the realization itself? When ignorance is destroyed, that is, when misidentification is eliminated, that which remains is it. But that which remains did not just begin. And being unborn or beginningless, it is deathless and endless. Self-realization is declared to be atmastiti, abidance as the self. Now, there are not two selves that one would abide as another. So what is meant? Your being, your existence, as it truly ever is, unchanging, forever unmodified, is itself the very substance of realization. Abidance as the self is known as self-knowledge. It is not a kind of knowledge like a thought that comes and goes, nor is it the possession of anyone, as if an individual would become realized, rather than the realization that there's no individual. The knowledge is of an imperceptible, inconceivable nature. In self-knowledge, being is knowing, just as existence is consciousness. So then, if you earnestly desire self-realization, inquire within yourself as to who realizes. Who are you? If you are not the body, inclusive of the senses, as well as the prana, if you are not the mind in any of its permutations, if you are not contained within such, and if you are not the ego, the notion of existing as an individual entity, what remains? What are you? The self is itself the knowledge. The self is itself the realization. It neither comes nor goes, as you do not come or go. For your existence is always. Sri Bhagavan declared that the egoless state is the only real state that there is. That state is self-realization. It is innate. The self that is Brahman is the only real self that there is. An unrealized state would belong to an unrealized being. Is there such a one? If presently you have the doubt, but I am not realized, if that is the idea in your mind, inquire as to who it is that is supposedly not realized. There's only one self. It is the one reality. To imagine yourself as an individual or a mind that is in another state is purely illusory. Imagination. And when the conjurer of imagination is sought, such a one is nowhere to be found. What remains is absolute existence, consciousness, bliss, Satchidananda. That which remains is now also and forever.
And now we'll take a little time and meditate, inquire, breathe in and breathe out. Take long, slow breaths. Notice the breath as it comes in and as it goes out. Now, notice that you exist. You exist, and you know that you exist. Investigate within yourself. Who is the knower? Does the knower need anything else to know? When your senses are quiet and your mind is quiet, you know this, so the knower does not need sensory experiences or mental experiences. The knower just knows. And ask yourself, who am I? Am I anything other than this knower? All right. Now let's close with a short chant. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you. This series on Ramana's 40 verses on reality will continue in the following weeks. If this satsang was of interest, then I have more for you. I have a free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs are on screen now. Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you.